Can someone help me? I'm Vivi. I'm 19 years old, and I'm trying to escape my town of New Haven. If any kids in New Haven happen to see this, can you let me know? I'll go over the details at the bottom of this post, but I want to clarify that I'm hiding behind the wall near the town exit. If you are an adult and come near me, I will shoot you. I'll start from the beginning. 2 weeks ago, I was living in an apocalyptic world. Ren tasted like chicken. I was told to douse him in BBQ sauce, which made him easier to swallow, but he was still too dry, stringy, and stuck in my teeth. This is the lifestyle I grew up with. I've only ever known this way of living and surviving. Father told us to treat Ren like food, to detach ourselves completely. But I couldn't let go of 18 years with him just like that. I grew up with Ren, freckled cheeks and lopsided smiles. Ren. We shared bunk beds, and he used to tell me scary stories to help me sleep. As we grew up together, we became closer, and he became the joker of our little group. When morale was low, he was always there to crack a joke and maintain a wide smile, despite being terrified himself. I admired his ability to wear a mask and pretend everything was okay, even when we sacrificed our friends. The night prior to his death, Ren climbed into my bed and told me his theories about his parents. He was positive they were still alive, and he was going to find them. When it was safe to go back to the surface, that was. Ren didn't remember a lot about his childhood, but he did know his parents were in the medical field. I found myself wearing his threaded jacket, the one he insisted on me keeping if he was ever chosen. He loved that jacket. Apparently, his 3-year-old self was wrapped up in it when Father found him. Now, Ren was stuck at the back of my throat. I kept chewing, but the more I swallowed, the sicker I felt. I wasn't even hungry, but Father insisted. If we were going to give our thanks for him keeping us safe and away from the surface, we had to obey every order Father gave us. Ren told me not to be upset and not to miss him. I tried not to. Father always said we had to detach ourselves from the food. That was the only way we were going to enjoy it. But I did miss Ren. The empty spot next to me felt cavernous and hollow. I missed his head on my shoulder. I missed late-night talks with him and confessing I maybe had a crush on him at the age of 9. He laughed and said, "Maybe when we're old enough, you can ask me to marry you." I don't think even he realized how powerful his words were. That I would marry him in a heartbeat if we were just normal kids in a normal world. It wasn't fair that I missed Ren as much as I did. I spat him out into my bowl, draining the rest of my water. "Gross," Jack grumbled from across the table. I shot him a glare, and he stuck out his tongue. Jack was the oldest among us, but you wouldn't think so by looking at him. Small and scrawny, with little meat on him, Jack was the definition of a squirt. Illuminated by the flickering candlelight, the others were eating, their faces cast in an eerie glow as they listened to Father's stories. I knew them all by heart. Father had been recounting the same tales since I was a little kid. When we were 3 years old, the world ended in what was called the disaster, a terrifying phenomenon that swept across the planet, turning adults into feral predators of their own children. Nobody knew how it happened. Some people hypothesized it was bioterrorism, while others insisted it was natural human evolution. All living things consumed their young, and now it was humanity's turn. According to Father, who vividly described the horrific experience of devouring his own son, it was a thirst unlike anything he had ever felt before, something he couldn't control or suppress. It burned right through logic and love, transforming every adult, every parent, into a cold-blooded, flesh-eating monster. Not a zombie, Father made sure to add. Zombies are mindless corpses brought back to life. They are fictional monsters. This was different. The ones affected did not lose their minds. They lost their humanity. Father averted his gaze from us. When I became afflicted with this phenomenon, my son was like nicotine, stronger than any black market drug. He cleared his throat. There was no right or wrong, no morals left in me. I was an animal when I killed and skinned him, cooking him into a hot stew. Father's smile was sickly. I didn't feel regret or pain. I wanted more. I wanted to feast on him until my stomach was bulging. His voice splintered apart. I killed and ate my son, and I didn't even care. I don't remember my son's name. Whatever this thing was, it took it away. It took away my memories of him, my love for him, my want to protect him, and turned me into a loveless monster. Father sighed. But it didn't end there. When it became known that children's flesh wasn't just like a drug to adults, but also granted youth and immortality when eaten, the planet fell into chaos. World leaders came apart first. Initially, a treaty was made among adults unaffected by the phenomenon. The Children's Association was born, created to protect and save kids from the feral adults. However, there was no Children's Association. Instead of trying to save kids, the governments were consuming them. Older kids who survived were taken in and brainwashed, converted into bounty hunters, and tasked with hunting us down. Stray kids in hiding who managed to survive being eaten were given a nickname: Threads. Apparently, when eaten, our flesh was stringy and thread-like. Father hid underground from the war going on between surviving older children who fought back and the feral adults hunting them down like animals. He took a group of young kids with him. There were 15 of us, now 6. I didn't remember much about my life before the disaster, but I did know I had a mother and father. One day, they walked out the door and left me watching cartoons. Mom told me she was going to be right back. Halfway through an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, Father wrapped his arms around me and carried me from my home to safety. Father did admit his original intention was to eat us. He never tried to sugarcoat his own craving for flesh, and that he too was just as monstrous as the adults hunting us down. But the longer he stayed isolated from the surface, Father named each of us. At first, it was to give us an identity, so he'd feel less guilty about killing and eating us. Once he'd named us, however, Father had to become a real parent to avoid us getting caught, which meant feeding and clothing us, singing lullabies, and spending hours struggling to get us to go to sleep. I guess fatherhood began to hit him. It's not like he wanted it, but he'd grown maternal towards us. He started to feel human again, growing attached to his food. As we grew up, he taught us everything we needed to know, basic academics, along with life skills like cooking food and typing. But that didn't stop his insatiable hunger. He promised to keep us safe from the adults for one small favor. Ren was the last to continue our favor. He was almost 6 months old, refrigerated bloody chunks piled in my bowl. Maybe that was why I felt so sick and couldn't eat. Father was getting hungry for fresh meat again. Part of me thought maybe his hunger had gone away. I did see him eating rice more often. But after he ravaged his way through Ren, I guessed wrong. When Father got to his feet, abruptly abandoning his latest story, the others went silent. Jack and Elsa were talking about a book they were reading, but once Father made it obvious he was reaching for the playing cards on the small table by the door, the two of them drifted off, their eyes going wide. Alia and Phoebe were already waiting for it. Neither of them had spoken all day, both of them ignoring their food. When Phoebe started crying, I wanted to comfort her. But what could I say? I didn't want to be sacrificed either. Phoebe, Father's voice was a warning. Be quiet. I had always seen Father more as a shadow, less of a human. I never really saw much of a face or an identity, just an outline of a person. In this case, I was happy I couldn't see the grinning smile spreading across his lips, only the slight contortions in his jaw. The room suddenly felt too small, claustrophobic, like it was going to swallow me up. Our home had always been small, a singular rectangular-shaped bunker underground. This place was cramped, with concrete walls absorbing the faded light from bare bulbs hanging from the low ceiling. The air was always damp and made my skin feel gross, and it always smelled like sulfur. Father was never specific about what it was or how he had obtained it. He just said it was our home. The bunker was divided into two cramped sections, a communal area where we ate and did daily activities, a tiny sleeping quarters with thin, uncomfortable mattresses, as well as a single bunk bed, and a storage room filled with supplies Father had gathered over the years. There were no windows, and the heavy reinforced door was the only connection to the outside world through underground tunnels. The feeling was all too familiar. The sensation of drowning, suffocating, knowing my time could be up. Jack couldn't stand still, tapping a bead on the ground. Elsa and Cal were frozen, their expressions hard to read. I had never thought about what it would be like to be eaten. I used to try and put myself in a chicken's shoes. Father had a laptop we were allowed supervised access to. No internet, but a whole database filled with his own research on this phenomenon. He compared us to chickens, living things with thoughts and memories and families, dragged from their homes and killed for food. Just like kids, adults didn't need chicken meat to survive. They wanted it, craved it like a drug. Father held out the playing cards with a reassuring smile that I didn't believe. He wasn't smiling to make us feel better. Father was smiling because he was hungry. All right, everyone, let's play. Father's expression made me nauseous. His tone was enough to make us stand up. Jack jumped up first. He was visibly trembling. When Elsa and Cal didn't move, he pulled them to their feet too. It hit me when Father was shuffling the cards, playfully nudging a petrified Jack with his shoulder. He never meant to save us. If anything, he only kept us alive so he wouldn't be lonely. The six of us stood in suffocating silence, fear palpable on our faces, the type I can't even describe. How can I possibly put that kind of feeling into words? The existential dread of what comes after death and the terror of being eaten. The whirlwind of endless what-ifs and could-have-beens. I could have grown up in a world where I went to school and graduated. I could have had loving parents who supported me. I could have turned 20 years old and asked Ren to senior prom and then to marry me. Something warm slithered its way up my throat. I could have escaped 2 years ago with Ren when he begged me to go with him. Vivi. Father's voice snapped me out of it, and I was suddenly all too aware that I was wearing my dead best friend's jacket. I could feel my skin crawling, phantom bugs filling my mouth. Ren wanted to leave, and I told him we were safe with Father. But that was when there were more of us, and less of a chance of being chosen. I wanted to be selfish. I wanted to turn my head and pretend the real monster wasn't right in front of me. Father cleared his throat impatiently, and I squeezed my eyes shut, reached forward, and plucked a card from the flimsy stack. The rules of the drawing were simple, and yet I could barely think straight. All we had to do was not pull a joker. 6 cards, and among them, 1 joker. For the unlucky player, they had officially offered themselves as meat to Father. I was yet to look at my own card, squeezing it into my fist. I could hear our combined breaths, our screaming pleas to any god listening. Jack drew a queen, his face lighting up. He looked like he might say something before stepping back, clearing his throat. Elsa, visibly trembling, drew a 4 of hearts, her hands shaking. Cal hesitated for a moment, his brows furrowed in concentration, before drawing a 6 of hearts. Alia folded her arms, exhaled, and drew a king. Phoebe, who looked like she was about to throw up, pulled a jack. Squeezing my card in my palm, I couldn't breathe. The others were staring at me, and I knew what they were thinking. 6 cards, 6 players, 1 joker. Suddenly, I wasn't standing in my home. I was imprisoned inside a slaughterhouse, and the walls were closing in. I remembered when Ren drew a joker and burst out laughing. He couldn't stop, even when I tried to calm him down, tried to wrap my arms around him and tell him everything was going to be okay. I felt his tears soaking my shoulder and his sobs rattling his chest, his lips grazing my ear, telling me things that never fully registered. We should have ran. His voice dripped with disdain that only truly hit me when I was in his place. Ren didn't smile at me when he died. He never forgave me. Why didn't we run? I couldn't understand why he was laughing. Why, despite his hollowed-out eyes, he was smiling like he'd won the game. But drawing that joker myself, I felt it, hysterics creeping up my throat. I laughed. It felt wrong, hollow, and alien, but also good. The concept of being eaten alive was suddenly so ridiculous that I was on my knees, howling into my arms, my body trembling with laughter I couldn't control. I tried to stop, tried to stifle my giggles with one hand clamped over my mouth, but it kept coming, slamming into me in waves of revulsion. I thought Ren was possessed by the Joker card, but now I understood it. I finally understood the feeling of complete despair washing over him. When I stopped laughing, I had already made my decision. I was going to die with a smile on my face, just like Ren. The others were frowning at me, mixed looks on their faces. "I'm sorry, Vivi," Jack whispered. His expression, however, said, "Sorry it's you and not me." Alia and Phoebe stepped back, as if I was suddenly contagious. Cal offered me a small smile, and that was enough. I'm glad it wasn't pitiful. It was just a smile. With the Joker in my hand, I readied myself to die. But there's a difference between being brave and being a coward. Between Ren Samuels and me. I watched him die with his head held high, and I was sure, in that disorienting moment of post-reality, that I could follow in his footsteps. However, my eyes were wandering, and my palms were growing clammy. Father was in the corner preparing his blade, and knowing that it would slice through my flesh and turn me into salty chicken, something in me snapped. I was a coward. I wasn't brave like Ren or Becca or Thomas and Jonas. I was a fucking coward, and I wasn't going to die. The world felt like it jumped into fast forward. I was aware I was twisting around, and it took 2 single breaths, one to get me to the door, and another when I was twisting the handle and yanking it open. The hunt began as soon as I catapulted myself from what I thought was home. There was never a hunt with the others. They gave themselves up. Cowards, however. They were free game. Throwing myself into a sprint, my mind spinning, I was aware that the others were already on my tail. The rules were simple, just like the card game. Cowards were caught, dragged back, and skinned alive. I had already made my decision, and going back to the bunker was suicide. Father was very strict with his rules. We were not supposed to leave the bunker. Adults and reformed kids brainwashed into bounty hunters plagued the underground tunnels, searching for threads. When I managed to get into the tunnels, however, throwing myself through the dark, ankle-deep in sewage, there was no sign of hunters. "Vivi!" Jack's voice echoed, almost startling me into place. "Vivi, come back. It's not safe." Jack's hesitant strides came to a halt. I could sense his fear of that single sliver of natural light leaking from above ground. Catching a glimpse of silver in the pitch black, I blindly reached out my hands. Ren's voice was in my head. "I've seen them. When I was on lookout with Jonas, we saw a ladder, Vivi. We can climb up and get out of here." He sounded so hopeful, and I had a sobering moment of vulnerability that threatened to send me to my knees. Grasping hold of the ladder, I lifted myself up, clawing my way toward the light. Light that was getting brighter, not the kind I was told about. Father said the sky was polluted bright red. He said the sun rose, but it was blocked out, casting an eerie red glow. When the world fell apart, nuclear power plants across the planet went into meltdown, and nobody could stop them. When I climbed through the metal grating, however, drinking in the sun's glare, sitting in a perfect, crystalline blue sky, Father's words were suddenly obsolete. The world was not as empty as I initially thought. It was bright, colorful. Something flew past me, choking fumes filling my nose, a throaty yell following. "Kid, what the fuck are you doing in the middle of the road?" Adult. I ducked back into the ground, my body seizing up. The adult's words barely registered in my mind. He was right. I was kneeling in the middle of a main road filled with traffic, with cars. Father told us vehicles had been taken out by an electromagnetic pulse. "Hey, are you good?" Another voice. This time it was softer. The guy hovering over me was a teenager, maybe a year younger than me. He was a thread, but he didn't look like one. The boy's outfit took me off guard. A white shirt and jeans, a leather jacket flung over the top. His hair wasn't like the boys in the bunker. It was vibrant red and styled and floppy, hanging over friendly brown eyes. In his hand was a rectangular device. Cell phone. Father told us phones were used as currency in the New World. This guy didn't look like a kid who was being hunted down, struggling to survive. He looked like a normal college boy. His eyes were bright, devoid of the hollow, cavernous look I was so used to seeing in others. Even Ren, with his wide smile, failed to hide his true feelings with his eyes. For a moment, I was disoriented by the sudden loud beeps around me and the baking sun on the back of my neck. The sun was supposed to be choked with pollution. The clouds were supposed to be a fairy tale. Turning my attention back to the stranger, I noticed one glaring detail. This kid wasn't malnourished like Jack and Ren. He was eating well. He was alive. Seeing people living their day-to-day lives and not suffering, it filled me with happiness. And then despair, when I could taste my best friend in my mouth. He was so salty. All at once, my body felt like it was crumbling. I was too aware of the world around me, gritty concrete scraping my palms and a cool breeze grazing my face. My stomach heaved, and I choked on Ren again. I think I was fucking screaming, my chest heaving with hysterical sobs, but I couldn't feel or hear anything. Couldn't even taste Ren as he dripped down my chin. I barely noticed the boy pulling me into his car, his voice a blur of panic. "Fuck, are you okay? Did you just crawl out of the ground?" "Oh fuck, oh god, okay, this is bad. Let me take you to the emergency room." When someone across the road shouted if I was okay, I let myself fragment. Father had fed me so many lies designed to keep us submissive. The sky wasn't red. My generation wasn't being hunted down. Adults weren't monsters, and I was safe. Above ground, I was safe. He kept me from the surface with those lies. Ren had died for nothing. Pressed against the cool leather of the car seat, curled into myself, I struggled to breathe. When we started to move, reality hit me in convulsive lightning bolts. The world, according to Father, was of his own creation. "So, what's your name?" the boy asked casually. "Do you sit in the middle of the road often, or is that like a TikTok thing?" The stranger tapped the steering wheel, clearly eager to ask more, but sticking to basics. I couldn't respond, my tongue twisted and wrong. I pressed my face against the window and watched life continue outside. I saw a mother with her baby, and tears pricked my eyes. The boy fiddled with his phone, and a song began to play through the speakers. I liked it. The rhythmic beat pulsed through my skull, pushing away my dark thoughts. Under the late afternoon sun, I finally took in the boy's face. He had freckles, just like Ren. "Do you, need me to take you home or something?" He cleared his throat. "Or maybe the sheriff's office." I noticed his side eye, his gaze lingering on the ragged remains of my clothes. Instead of commenting on the deep red stains on my shirt, he handed me a can. Soda. Real soda. A luxury in the bunker. I had only tasted lukewarm Diet Coke. I drank it down quickly. It was fruity, perfect, and refreshing. The guy laughed. Geez, don't drink it that fast. I found my voice. Sorry. No, you don't have to apologize. The boy sighed. Where do you live? If you want, I can take you home. I'm Jordan, by the way. Vivi. His smile was warm, though the more I was looking at him, I could see that eerie blue light striking across his jawline. Vivi. Ooh, nice name. Like Nefertari Vivi. He shook his head when I didn't reply, his expression sheepish. Please tell me you get the reference. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't cry. Father had lied about everything. Relief washed over me, warm and real. I didn't have to die. My eyes flickered, my head bouncing against the glass of the window. Outside, the streets were bustling. There were kids everywhere, and my heart was singing. I was watching a little kid run across the road with his parents when we drove past what I figured was a high school. Empty. The windows had been blown through, garbage covering the campus. Further down the road, however, another high school came into view. There they were, this time visible through looming metal gates. Kids. Hey, can I talk to Blue? Jordan's murmur brought me back to reality. Sir. He sighed. Yes, I've got one of them. He leaned back in his chair, his seat squeaking. Yeah, no, I'm not fucking stupid. 500. He turned his head, and I noticed the blue light attached to his ear flashing. 500, and you tell me where my brother is. We had a deal. I caught movement, his head tipping back. No, tell me where Ryan is, and it's yours. The 500 means nothing to me, asshole. I think I fell asleep, my head still awkwardly pressed against the pane. When I woke up, Jordan was being yelled at. He was also doing some of the yelling. Oh, come on, I wasn't even going that fast. The sun was gone, late afternoon bleeding into twilight. I had never seen the night sky. I had never seen stars or the sliver of the moon visible over the horizon. There was a figure outside the window, illuminated in floodlights, an adult. I felt myself stiffen up before remembering adults weren't hunting us down. Father was. I was very clear, Jordan. The woman's voice sounded like nails on a chalkboard. If I caught you speeding again, I would report you. Yes, Miss Carter. The boy's tone dripped with sarcasm. I'm aware I was possibly definitely speeding, but as you can see, he gestured to me with flailing hands. This girl is clearly distressed, and I'm taking her to the sheriff's office. Jordan pulled out a piece of paper from under his seat. I have a license right here. I can see that. He whistled. All right, well, I'll be on my way. Mr. Redbird, if you so much as touch that steering wheel, I will report you. But, the woman cleared her throat. I can take it from here. Jordan's eyes darkened significantly, his smile strained. I said, I've got it. Jordan, would you like me to contact your employer? His fingers tightened around the steering wheel. I'm one of their best, so no. Hand over the girl, and I won't say a word about your speeding. The boy scoffed, and I saw a whole other side to him. He reached out reluctantly, opening my door. She's all yours. To my surprise, he didn't move or speak when the woman gently grasped my arm. I was gently coaxed from the seat, and the door slammed shut. She wasn't finished grilling him. Are you chewing, Jordan? He shrugged. What? I can't chew and drive. The woman didn't reply, and he exhaled out an exaggerated sigh, opened his mouth, and pulled out the piece of gum. To my confusion, the lady plucked it from his fingers with a handkerchief. Thank you. He rolled his eyes. You're welcome. Have fun. A loud bang coming from the back startled me. Miss Carter shot the boy an accusatory glare. Car trouble, Mr. Redbird? Jordan glanced at me, a smile tugging at his lips, as another unmistakable bang echoed from the back, this time louder. Yep. Car trouble, ma'am. His smile had too many teeth. Have a great night. With a two-fingered salute, he drove off, leaving me with a face full of exhaust fumes. 3 hours later, I was sitting in a comfy chair in the sheriff's office, a towel wrapped around me. Miss Carter sat in front of me, the glare from her laptop screen bathing heavy-looking sleep circles. She told me to tell her everything, and when I did, spluttering out my whole life story, the woman paused to hand me a tissue. I didn't realize I was crying, swiping at my nose. Miss Carter was very helpful. She offered me drinks and some microwave noodles. According to her, my age placed me on the threshold of an adult in town. While they were tracking down my parents, I was offered a place at a boarding house for grown-up orphans. I was halfway through telling her about Ren when she asked for my tissue. I handed it over, and she offered a fresh one before jumping to her feet. Miss Carter's smile was kind. I wasn't used to kind. I'm just going to process your details in the system, she said. I'll be right back. Her words twisted my gut. That's what my mom said before Father took me from her. Mrs. Carter, she told me to call her Linda, was gone for a while. Her office was cozy, and slumped in my spinning chair, I was tempted to sleep. She left me with a laptop to play with, so the first thing I did was check out the internet. There was no disaster, and just like our town, the world continued on as normal. I was looking through online news articles when I started to feel nauseous. I wasn't used to normal food. In my search for the bathroom, I found another office. I could see Linda through the window. She had something pressed to her face, and I wondered if she had a nosebleed. But then I saw the creases in the tissue paper, and the realization started to hit me. It was my tissue paper, the one I swiped at my nose and mouth with. I could feel myself slowly moving back when the woman's eyes rolled to pearly whites, her lips parting. The way she moved in erratic jolts sent barf erupting into the back of my mouth. Linda was trembling, slamming the tissue against her nose and mouth, inhaling it like a drug. Inhaling me like a drug, just like Father said. He said we were like a black market drug to them. I only caught a hold of myself when she dropped the tissue, her hand slipping into her jeans pocket and pulling something out. Jordan's used gum. It was sticky, wrapped around her pinched fingers. When Linda dropped it into her own mouth, I remembered how to run. When her mouth opened, wider and wider and wider, I was already out of the door. Twisting around, I no longer saw a human inside the room. Instead, a void-like mouth expanding, inky black darkness chasing after me. I got out of there and ran, straight into Jordan. He didn't look fazed by my expression. "Let me guess," he said. He was leaning against the doorframe with his arms folded. I had zero idea how he just casually walked into a sheriff's office. Jordan inclined his head, and there it was. That haunted, empty cavern in his eyes, the eyes of a thread. "Miss Carter just tried to eat you, didn't she?" In my panic, I tried to get past him, only for him to sidestep in front of me. "I can help you," he said. "I was trying to help you earlier, but you were kidnapped." Before I could speak, his expression darkened significantly. "You can either come with me or become a main course." His gaze flicked to my blood-stained shirt. "Your choice." I think I was going to go with Jordan, but then I remembered the banging in his truck, that blue light attached to his ear. I couldn't trust it. Shoving past him, I ran until I couldn't breathe. Over the last few days, I've been in hiding. I swiped a phone from an adult, and thankfully, it has the internet. The same car passes every day and night, and I know it's Jordan. But he's a thread. Why would he hunt down other threads? I can't stop fucking shaking. Father lied to me about everything. but I don't think he was lying about the town. The outside world is normal, clearly. But New Haven is something else entirely. I think the adults here are just like him, or even worse. So, if you are a kid in New Haven, please help me. The adults in my town are monsters with human faces. If you are an adult, I have a gun, and I will shoot you. Please don't hurt me.